Hello, I am Pat Gillum-Sams, the founder and CEO of the Sistah Covenant. What is the Sistah Covenant? It is a platform for purposed and powerful women to empower and inspire other powerful women of color. Black women are resilient. We nurture the world, our families, our spouses, our children, our communities, the boardroom, and everything in between. But who fills our cup? I often am reminded of when we fly, we're told to put our oxygen mask on first. And that is what the Sistah Covenant is all about. It's a safe space for authentic dialogue between sisters, my friends, your friends, all of our friends, coming together for a time such as this. Join me Sunday mornings, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, first, third, and fifth Sundays for the Sistah Covenant, a safe space to laugh a lot, cry a little, and fill your cup. Good morning. Great Sunday morning. And welcome. We are a year and a half in. And as we said last podcast, we are looking forward to the second anniversary of the Sistah Covenant. We are super excited. I am bursting with excitement for all the plans that we have that will be with you in mind for our second year. To God be the glory. Thank you for being on this journey with us. And we have lots more to look forward to as we continue to empower women all over this country with relevant, right now topics that matter to us and to our families, those we love, and our communities. We are positioned and poised for powerful conversations. And with that in mind, we are going to take a hiatus over the summer to do just that, to plan and to be positioned for more powerful conversations. So if you are excited about a certain podcast that you have seen here on the Sistah Covenant in the last year and a half, ping us in the Sistah Circle and let us know which one was your favorite, because we are going to be rebroadcasting those favorite podcasts over the next 3 months. So let us know, let us hear from you, because we are excited to do just that. Bring more powerful conversations from empowering phenomenal women to empower and to fill our cups. Thank you for purchasing your Sistah Covenant merchandise. It is not too late to get your nice Sistah Covenant cap, mask, because we are still in a pandemic and you need that mask in certain situations, or that beautiful, beautiful Sistah Covenant shirt. As you know, when you make a purchase of $100 or more, $10 will go to UNCF, because a mind is a terrible thing to waste. And this morning, we are excited. Drum roll, please. We are excited to present a check for $350 to UNCF. Yes, $350 doesn't seem like a lot, but it is, because as we have said on this journey, especially over the last 2 years of this pandemic, these students need funding, emergency funding, from everything from library fees that they can't pay, which means they don't get their degrees, to medical assistance on campus when they go to the infirmary on campus, to travel, going back and forth home. This money will assist them. So coming up in the fall, you will hear more from my dear friend, Gwen Hewitt, who will unpack all of that for us so we understand. We've known UNCF for years to provide scholarships to students attending HBCUs, but these students also need emergency assistance. So we are so excited to present these monies to UNCF on behalf of the Sistah Covenant, and specifically you purchasing those beautiful merchandise, the Sistah Covenant merchandise, as well as our sustaining sisters and our sisters keepers. Thank you for allowing us to sow a seed into these young people. Be a part of our Sistah Circle, and you can do that by watching us on Facebook, opening your Facebook on your phone or your computer, searching the Sistah Covenant, finding the Groups tab, clicking on Groups titled the Sistah Circle, click Join Group, and you will receive a request to join. And it is just that simple. We also are continuing our 25 challenge. As I said a minute ago, we are still in the middle of a pandemic and the numbers are increasing. So we ask that you get your vaccination and encourage all those that you love in your circle to do the same. Post a picture or a video on why you got vaccinated using the hashtags Powerful Women Get Vaccinated. Together we win. Tag at the Sistah Covenant and 3 friends. It is just that simple. As you know, we started our sponsors being a Sistah's Keeper or a Sustaining Sister just a few months ago. You don't have to be one of our sponsors to be in our Sistah Circle, but if you choose to be a part of our Sistah Circle and take the opportunity to go on this journey with us, to continue to empower women of color all around this country by virtue of being one of our Sistah's Keepers. If you have a business or an organization you would like to promote, or one of our sustaining sisters, please do so by contacting us at the Sistah's Covenant. Now at this time, I would like to share with you our May Sistah's Keeper promo. I am Pat Gillum Sams, the founder and CEO of the Legacy League.
I am Dr. Barbara Darby, Chair of the Board of the Legacy League.
And we are excited to bring this powerful professional leadership program for women, young women of color, to you.
It is a program that will enable these young ladies to be supported, mentored, and encouraged and empowered by women who have blazed a trail and who can provide them with information that will be of great help to them as they move forward professionally.
The programming is rich and it is uniquely designed for young women around 5 pillars of strength: mentorship, leadership, service, sisterhood, and legacy. Legacy to leave a trail where you climb and lift for future generations.
Just imagine not knowing what to do in certain circumstances and having the opportunity to interact with women who have been down that trail, who have had the experiences and can point out some tips that would be very helpful to these young women. You cannot beat that. And so we know that all who engage in this program will leave the better for having gone through it.
Barbara and I have been dear friends for some 40 years, and she, I'm proud to say, has been a mentor to me, and that is priceless. So we invite you to visit our website, thelegacyleague.org, to find out more information on how your company or that special young woman of color in your life can be a part of this powerful program. Of course, you know, I am as proud as a peacock. The Legacy League Inc. That is a powerful leadership development program for purposed women 30 and under that are going to set this world ablaze. So if you know a special young lady in your life, please have her go to our website, thelegacyleagueinc.org, for more information. We've extended the deadline for applications for our 2023 class to June 5th, and we would love to include those women of color that can benefit from the nurturing around those 5 pillars of strength that you see before you. Now, I thank all of our Sistah's Keepers, from our February 1st Sistah Keepers, Brenda Jackson, to our March Sistah's Keeper, Melissa Fulmore Hardwood, Brown Girls in the Boardroom. Of course, my dear friend Sonia Jackson Miles, the Sistah Accord, and my beautiful friend, Dr. Lorraine Polite Clark, Today's Dentistry, and Sutel Dental. And of course, the Legacy Group and Legacy League, and all of my sustaining sisters, those dear friends of mine that have been with me, ride or die, for 20, 30, 40 years. You've seen many of those ladies in our opening promo video. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So now I am super excited. As you know, this is Mental Health Awareness Month. May is Mental Illness Month. And last podcast, we had an opportunity to revisit 2 very intimate conversations with 2 women who have lost sons to this, I call it a pandemic, but this epidemic of hopelessness that leads to suicide. And they were so gracious to sit down with me a year ago and talk about the journey that no mother, no parent, no friend or family member wants to live with a loved one. So this podcast, I'm excited to introduce a young woman. A young woman, as you know, the 5th Sunday is all about the youngins. This young woman is doing some phenomenal things in the space of mental health. She is a psychiatrist and she practices in Atlanta, Georgia, but she's also a fitness guru. And we know her as Dr. Britt Fit, because she believes that uh, keeping your mind as well as your body fit will help the mind and heal the heart. So I had an opportunity to sit down with her this week and talk with her about mental health and unpack what all that looks like. And I want to share that conversation with you now. Welcome, 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 Dr. Britt. Come join me in the studio. How are you, beautiful?
I'm so good. I'm so good. How are you?
I am well, so good to virtually finally meet you.
Yes, ma'am.
I have heard all the wonderful, wonderful things about you, and you are doing some amazing things. So let's get started. We are going to unpack
Mm-hmm.
this important topic that we just kind of generalize as mental illness. We know May is Mental Illness Awareness Month.
Mm-hmm.
So, here at the Sister Covenant, as you well know, we've had this conversation 2 weeks ago. We had this conversation with two moms that unfortunately have lost their sons to suicide. But so much has happened and continues to happen. It's not like this is just the flavor of the month. It just keeps on coming in the news with celebrities, with loved ones, people we know. So help us unpack that. What is mental illness?
Yeah. So, the clinical definition of mental illness is a change in behavior, thinking, or emotion that's going to cause a severely negative impact on your day-to-day life. I got a couple different definitions of it. So sometimes I like to separate mental illness from injuries to mental health. Because mental illness to me is something that's chronic. It's going to be lifelong. It's something that you're probably going to need different modalities of treatment for. And it's going to affect you and touch you in lots of different ways. And so you're going to need a little bit of different types of support than somebody who has, say, a transient kind of injury to their mental health. Something happened. They suffered a severe loss. They lost a job. Those are things that definitely impact our mental health negatively and can affect us for a long time. But it's not quite the same as like a brain pathology or a mind pathology.
So, what are some of the most popular, I guess I should say, and I don't know if popular is the right way to term it, but what do we see most around mental disorders?
So I think that's, the question that is going to be answered differently depending on who you are, right? So as somebody that sees, a spectrum of mental illness throughout my workday, I definitely see a lot of psychotic disorders, right, in the hospital when people come in. But as far as like what I think the general population would be more familiar with and what affects general population that don't necessarily make it all the way to the hospital doors, depression and anxiety. Anxiety actually being more common than depression. PTSD is another big one that affects a lot of the population, particularly when you have so many people who have been to like combat and war. So many of our veterans make up so much of our population. Personality disorders is another thing we don't talk about a lot, but it definitely impacts a large percentage of our population. So that's another one that's a huge deal. And then psychotic disorders, people who are hearing things, seeing things, or believing things that other people can't see, hear, and have no reason to believe, right? So,
Dr. Britt, why psychiatry?
Yeah.
The impetus for that.
Yeah, so I actually went into med school knowing there were two things I wasn't going to do. One was OB, because you having a baby at 4 a.m. sounds like a personal problem to me. Wasn't doing that. And psychiatry, because I just didn't understand, didn't feel like medicine. You don't touch your patient, right? You don't. And so it just didn't make any sense to me. And then while I was in med school, some very important things happened to me. One, I had a baby, so I became a mom. And two, I lost my mom. And the stressors of that, on top of trying to get through med school, really affected me. They affected my emotional health and also my mental health. And I was struggling. And everybody couldn't tell I was struggling because I was still really productive. I was passing on my tests. I was everywhere that I needed to be. But one of the ways that people often know that I'm struggling is that my hair is not done and my nails are not done. And that happened pretty consistently for a long time. And eventually one of my homegirls was like, no, you need to go talk to somebody, because just because you carry it well doesn't mean it's not heavy. I'll never forget her saying that. And so I went through the school's mental health services, found somebody to talk to, and it was just a very powerful experience. When I walked in, the psychiatrist was this young Black woman who understood my experience in a way that I didn't have to qualify. I walked in, I said, I'm tired, and she understood. She didn't ask me how many hours of sleep I got. She just understood what I meant. And that was so powerful. And as somebody who is often the one who is a resource for others, it felt really good to be able to have somebody to talk to. And it really helped me, work through a lot of the things that I was struggling with, which was not only affecting me mentally and emotionally, but had that continued on, it would have affected me financially, right? If you're not doing the things that you're supposed to do, because over time you haven't taken care of yourself, you can't be that doctor because you're not taking care of yourself. And so it would have affected my children. It would have affected just so many aspects of life that it would have affected. And so after that, after I went through that experience, I decided that, that was a reason many of the things that happened. I didn't go through all of that for nothing, right? And it really just kind of guided my path and directed me towards wanting to help other people get through those transient injuries to mental health, like we talked about, but also the things that affect people over a lifetime. They affect families. I want to be involved in family care. I want to be involved in social structures and housing support, right? And connecting you with the proper resources. It's not just medication that's in my toolbox. And so I fell in love with psychiatry, despite the fact that I went in thinking that was not what I was going to do at all. So
That is powerful. Powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Some young person, some 40-year-old needed to hear what you just said. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
you. Yeah. I think it helps when we humanize the experience. So from the perspective of somebody that's also been a patient, you kind of walk in thinking this person gonna think I'm crazy. Or this person's going to think I'm weak. Because I think more than crazy, I thought I didn't want to feel weak. I didn't want to appear like I was struggling. And it was just a very human experience. And so sometimes, I'm not saying all providers do that, because all providers are not created equal. But if you find the right one, and if you continue to advocate for yourself, there's somebody who can really resonate with your humanity, like you would want any doctor to, not just a mental health practitioner, but any doctor.
But you said something key, that you had been the resource.
Mm-hmm.
You were that person.
Yeah.
But it took somebody who knew you well
Mm-hmm.
to say, but just because you are carrying it doesn't mean it's not heavy.
Mm-hmm.
That was huge.
Mm-hmm.
And you heard that.
Mm-hmm.
There had been other signs, but that resonated with you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, again, as women now, we nurture everybody and everything.
Mm-hmm.
We can't be our best selves and be that resource for everybody and everything if we don't recognize that we need the care ourselves.
Empty cups can't pour, right?
And empty cups cannot pour.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for, having this conversation. I think when you meet a patient, so I don't tell my patients my business because that's like the law. You can't, right? But in conversations like this, I think it just helps to humanize not only patients, because, anybody struggling with mental illness is a person first, and they deserve, right? They're worthy, like we talked about, a treatment, but also providers, because we are also people who have experiences. And even though we're the expert in medicine, you are the expert in your life. And so you should definitely advocate for yourself and work hand in hand with your provider. So I'm just thankful you allowed me to be here.
So Dr. Britt, you're a trained clinician. This is what you do.
Mm-hmm.
But for someone, a loved one,
mm-hmm.
how do I differentiate between someone that is just stressed because it's the end of the semester? My son just graduated. So whenever I would call him, or let's just say he wouldn't return my calls, how about that? I'm like, okay. He said, Mom, I'm just stressed. I got a lot going on. Okay. At what point as a mom do I lean in and say, okay, what's going on here? How do I differentiate? What are the signs? That's stressed or anxiety or a little sluggish, depression?
So that's one of the symptoms, right, of depression, is decreased energy. And so what does that look like? So I think sometimes we pull out textbooks and we say these words and we don't give people examples, right? So when I say decreased energy, what I mean is You don't have enough energy to shower. You don't have enough energy to eat, which feeds into another symptom, which is decreased appetite. Sometimes it can be increased though. Sometimes people eat too much. Less of a need for sleep, but more often than not, more of a need for sleep. It's hard to get out of bed. And part of the reason it's hard to get out of bed is because it's hard to fall asleep at night when you're depressed and when you're anxious and when your mind is racing. The other thing that I think we don't talk about often is like persistent feelings of sadness, right? So if somebody just doesn't look like themselves, but sometimes people are able to hide that pretty well. And so, like you said, there's no way to really differentiate whether it's stress or depression. But when people start to do things, we talked about at the beginning of the show when you were doing your introduction about suicide. And one of the things that is a symptom of depression, right, are thoughts of suicide. And it doesn't necessarily mean somebody has a plan to end their life. It can mean something as simple as disappointment that they woke up this morning, right? Or wishes before bed that they don't. It doesn't have to be an active plan. And so, those are the things that kind of add up over time. But paying attention to how people are eating, if they're sleeping, if they used to text you every day and now they don't text you, and maybe it's a stressful season. So maybe you give them a week, maybe 10 days. But once we get to that 2-week mark, we got to start, kind of sounding the alarms and saying, hey, I'm pulling up on you,
You mentioned PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
What's some of the triggers?
Mm.
You mentioned military.
Mm-hmm.
We hear about road rage.
Mm-hmm.
What are triggers for
Mm-hmm.
people that you see in your practice?
Yeah. So post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, is a mental illness or a mental health condition that is secondary to a traumatic event. So I mentioned veterans, so people who have military experience or combat experience, but people who have experienced any type of violence, physical violence, sexual violence, sometimes even emotional violence, people who have witnessed a serious accident, right? In our world today with mass shootings and things like that, people who have witnessed those things, sometimes people even talk about the secondary trauma from some of the things that we witness on social media when we see some of those shootings and things like that. And so with PTSD, what ends up happening is that people will re-experience those traumatic events and it becomes very real to them. They will have extreme flashbacks. They will have, persistent anxiety. Sometimes, in cases where sometimes they make it to the hospital, they'll even be experiencing like psychotic symptoms. And it's not that they have a psychotic disorder. It's that they are so traumatized that their mind is telling them things, or, they're seeing things, hearing things that other people can't because they're so traumatized.
So this pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
it has not been our friend.
Mm-mm.
And really, if truth be told,
Mm-hmm.
that was the impetus for the Sistah Covenant.
Mm-hmm.
These little cute square boxes where you're in meetings with folks and you see these beautiful photos and the
Yeah.
people aren't bringing their camera up that day. And then you realize next time you're on next week or 2 weeks, they still aren't bringing up their camera.
Mm-hmm.
What is really going on behind the scenes? Have you
Mm-hmm.
seen an uptick? Has it been consistent? Is it better now that we're getting back into life? Tell us about what you're seeing as it relates to mental illness and the pandemic.
Yeah, so I think we're going to be dealing with the effects of COVID and mental health for decades to come. I really do. So one, I think the important thing to recognize is that we were socialized completely different than what we've ever known for 2.5 years. And, intermittently from now on, we may still have moments where we have to dial it back, right? That inconsistency of we don't know what's next. We don't have any stability. And that's going to make people anxious, like we talked about. Those increased kind of feelings of, when I say anxious, what I mean is like, tremors, like you're tremulous, you can't catch your breath, your heart is beating fast. Sometimes anxiety doesn't look like that though. Sometimes, like you said, anxiety is I got another meeting on this computer. I don't feel like turning on my computer. My stomach hurts when I wake up in the morning because I know I got to get back on Zoom. And so that affects people, pretty tremendously. Beyond that, kids were socialized completely differently. They weren't in school. They weren't interacting with other children. And so I think, when we talk about mental health and mental illness, oftentimes we think about adults, but we have to recognize that this happens over a lifetime, right? And so I think the effects of COVID and the pandemic, its effects on people losing people and not being able to properly grieve, not being able to come together, that loss of community. Community is so important to mental health. And so I think that's going to be another effect. Job structures change. People went from sitting in an office. Maybe you had a best friend at work You ain't seen them. You can't talk to them. Side conversations are so important. That's how most of us are social in adulthood. And when you can't have them because, you're not in a breakout room on Zoom, it can be difficult. And so I think that the effects of COVID are going to be something that we're going to see for decades to come. And I have seen an increase of people coming in, particularly with anxiety. And just the uncertainty of not knowing what's next or not feeling safe going back to work, right? Those things are all affecting people's mental health. So I think there's no way to really completely state how COVID is going to affect us. I just know that it's going to for a very long time.
Dr. Britt, let's talk a little bit about social media. We started off talking about college students and the rash of suicides that have been in the media recently, from the young lady that seemed like she had just a charmed life, beautiful, apparently successful, an attorney, a media personality, queen, right? And to these student athletes. What part is social media playing in this? Because you see one thing, it appears that it's beautiful and it's glamorous, and these people are suffering somehow inside. On the young lady, if you're familiar with the young lady that attended Southern University and her IG page, right? As a parent, I read that and I'm thinking, where, what, when,
did we miss?
What did I miss? Talk to us about the effects or how maybe social media is kind of exacerbating this.
So I definitely think social media can sometimes make it more difficult to pick up on people's symptoms, because when you see somebody in person and, they just don't look right, maybe they don't smell right because they haven't been maintaining their hygiene, they're just not dressed quite right. They got one blue shoe on, one gray shoe. Like, okay, ma'am, something's not right, right? But on social media, where everything is so curated, right? Content is curated and we're able to kind of make things look how we want them to, and not only able to make things look how we want them to, but kind of pressured to. It feels like, building a brand or being a brand is such a tremendous pressure on youth, today that maybe didn't exist several decades ago. And so I don't necessarily know that social media is a cause, right? But, the argument could be made that it's correlated with just increasing pressures, anything that kind of puts more on your plate to be perfect. None of us are perfect, right? And I think that we're all worthy. Something that I remind people of all the time is that, you're worthy of being okay with not being perfect. You should feel okay with that, right? Because none of us have it all together. But when you feel pressure to make it look that way, it can definitely, contribute to some of those feelings of what we talked about: anxiety, depression. It also can hide some of those like big red flag symptoms, right? So if you feel pressure to say, hey, I'm having such a good day, and post a pretty picture, when, if you woke up this morning and you were having thoughts that, man, I'm sad that I woke up, right? And that hides those things. And it encourages people to kind of push through things that really deserve a pause. And I think that that's the biggest probably hindrance to social media. But I think social media also has good aspects. I think that people learn quite a bit about mental health from social media. There are conversations that we're having about bipolar disorder, psychosis, schizophrenia. Those words were taboo before social media. And now people are able to kind of, inform other people about their experiences. And so in some ways, kind of like COVID, right? I think it connects people. And then in other ways, it really kind of makes it difficult for us to connect, and it hides a lot of the things that, really should be brought to the forefront when we're talking about mental health and mental illness.
Age. Does mental illness surface, if you will, at a certain age? I know I've been reading again about a lot of these youthful suicides, and we don't have to focus just on suicide because we know people live with mental illness. But is there an age that you're more likely to see some of this manifest?
So mental illness is a spectrum, right? And injuries to mental health are also possible across the spectrum of an entire lifetime. So there are some mental illnesses. There's a whole entire specialty of psychiatry dedicated to child and adolescent. So there are some mental illnesses that actually do develop in childhood. The other part of that is I think sometimes the words mental illness has a stigma. And so people don't necessarily like to group their children in that or to talk about that. But even things like learning disabilities are actually in what's called the DSM-5, or how psychiatrists kind of, go through and we characterize different illnesses and how we treat them, right? And so it can start in childhood. As far as the things that we're talking about, depression can definitely impact children and adolescents. In fact, suicide is one of the top 3 leading causes of death in children or adolescents 15 to 19. And so, we that part of that conversation and talking about depression and anxiety, but also the development of psychotic disorders, right? So when we look at men, and this is an important kind of differentiation when we talked about your son, right, and how he said he was stressed, and maybe I don't know how long it took him to come back around, but I'm sure at that 2-week mark you would have been in a car or on a plane like, okay, son, you haven't answered my text, right? And so with men, what happens is between the ages of 18 to 25, if we're looking at those psychotic disorders, so that's when the people are having hallucinations, whether it be auditory hallucinations, they're hearing things other people don't hear, seeing things other people don't hear, or visual hallucinations, and delusions, right? They're just believing things that are bizarre. They don't make any sense. Their behavior is erratic. Perhaps they're very impulsive. Perhaps they're overly sexual. Perhaps they're on spending sprees. And so those development of like those psychotic type and then, the other side of that is the bipolar spectrum. For men, that presents 18 to 25. And an important differentiator is that oftentimes in women, we see it later. So women usually develop those disorders between 25 and 35. And both of those things are very devastating. So you have this young man who's worked really hard, gotten into college, done all the things right. And now he's away from home for the first time, away from a support system, right? And a very critical part of a mental illness, which is establishing care and getting the support systems, educating the family, because that's such an important in the treatment of mental illness, is how other people respond, right, to the mental illness. And now he's away and people can't see it every day. And, a lot of times that's how we lose people, and, we delay treatment. And they end up in other things, like legal troubles and things that are secondary to something that could have been caught earlier. So that's very tragic. And on the other spectrum, for women, it's tragic because a lot of times what I see is women who have completely established lives. They have children, they have husbands, they have jobs, they've been promoted, and now they are, acting bizarrely at work, not going to work. I have several different patients that have come in because they have had affairs, and it wasn't necessarily that they are bad people with, a moral compromise. They were manic and they were making bad choices. And so, those are the things and very important conversations that we have to have so that we know when to look for things in certain populations. So I'm glad you asked that question because it's important.
So is there a cure? Is there a cure?
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting question. So yes and no. So I think some mental illnesses are going to be chronic and lifelong, and there is a treatment, right? So there's medication, but there's also lifestyle adjustments, right? People can change how they eat. They can monitor their sleep. Sleep is so important for so many of these mental illnesses, not just the psychotic disorders and mania, but also, general depression and anxiety. Getting enough sleep is so important. Maintaining physical exercise. And so there are ways that we can treat and alter and help to prevent the worsening of mental illness in a lot of cases. But as far as like a cure, most mental illnesses usually are chronic and they're waxing and waning. So there may be periods where people are doing better than others, but for the most part, people will require, long-term treatment in the case of severe mental illness.
So we are strong. We are resilient. I know you can't see the S, but it's there. It's an S.
The Superwoman.
Superwoman.
Yeah, I got mine on. I don't know if you can
I
see
know
it.
you do. I see it back there. I know you have it.
Yeah.
And we come from a culture of spirituality, and baby, you just need to pray.
Mm-hmm.
I had the director of NAMI on last year from Michigan, and he said his pastor, he and a pastor friend, I guess, had a conversation because the pastor said you just need to rely more on your faith. And he said, okay, so if you fall out in front of me, and I know you have a heart issue, should I try to get your medicine for you? Should I call 911 or should I just pray? And his response was, try to get me some help.
Mhm.
So that's the thing. How do
Mhm.
we break
Mhm.
out? Because sometimes, and someone said this to me recently, and that's why this is titled It's Okay Not to Be Okay.
Mhm.
We are some of our worst problems because
Mhm.
we're strong and we got it together, and that's okay. I got it. I got it. What Talk to us about that piece? I know I'm the
Yeah.
worst
Yeah.
about it, but
Yeah.
talk to us. How do we help ourselves?
Mhm.
We can help other people.
Mhm. Yeah. So I think so I am a faith-based person in general, not just in my life, but also as a doctor. So, I do think prayer is important. Um, I just don't think it's the only thing, right? And I think that that's also demonstrated in the Bible, right? Faith without works is dead, right? Even God says that. And so, one of the things that I like people to remember is that God wants us to have an abundant life, and he wants you to be fruitful and multiply, right? These are things that are coming straight from the word. And so if you're not well at baseline emotionally or mentally, you're not going to be able to bear good fruit, and that's not what God wants for us, first of all. Second, this is gonna, I mean, it's hypocritical because I am a superwoman. These are things that I'm still working through, right? Even as a physician, even as somebody who is a mental health practitioner, I struggle with asking for help. I struggle with knowing when to say no. I struggle with, pushing bedtime back. I know I need 8 hours, but today I'm going to get 6 because there's something else to do at 10 o'clock, because there's never enough time to get through the to-do list. And so we all do these things. And I think that the biggest thing is, one, not making a habit of it. Two, understanding that it's okay to ask for help, right? So one thing that I've been so thankful about in my experiences with other women in medicine, in my sorority, within my friend groups, is that when we do have these conversations and when we're vulnerable, right? And when we're able to just say out loud, hey, I need some help, there's help. There's always help, always. And I think sometimes one of the things that I tell people all the time is that asking people to know something that you didn't say you need and that you didn't ask for is literally asking them to hallucinate, right? It's asking them to hear something that you didn't say. People are not mind readers. And if they are, chances are, there are some other things going on that need treatment, right? And so, because we are talking about mental illness and because we don't want to exacerbate those things in ourselves and in others, it's so important to rely on our community. And that's a God given gift. God gave us other people, right? The word says that, we get our comfort from God so that we can go comfort others. And so it's just so important to rely on other people, but also to remember that struggle is not what God signed you up for. That's not ultimately, the goal. So faith is very important, though. I will also say that in faith and in those struggles between like faith, mental illness, and the stigma, finding a provider that is aligned with faith is super important, and they exist, right? So, if you find a provider and they are brushing off your beliefs, then that's not the provider for you, and you do have options, and you can find one that is aligned with how you want to live your life and, demonstrate your faith but also, receiving treatment if you need it.
That's right. That's right. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So you are a fitness guru. We see those barbells back
Yeah, that's right. I
there.
know.
See
Yeah.
those barbells back there.
Yeah.
Tell us about fitness. I
Yeah.
know for myself, I'm not doing what I want to do, but when I get out and I walk, I mean, I just get the clarity. I mean, it's like
Mhm.
God. You talk about spiritual. It's a connection like no
Mhm.
other. He is talking directly to
Mhm.
me. It's like he's walking right there with me.
Mhm.
And I know he is. So talk
Mhm.
to us about that physical fit and
Mhm.
how you've used that really in your own practice.
Mhm. Yeah. So I actually own a business. It's called Full Cup Fitness. And the mantra of my business is empty cups don't pour, right? You cannot give what you don't have. And so, part of maintaining our health, our mental health, right, is maintaining our physical health. So a lot of times people will come in and they are depressed. They are clinically depressed, right? They're not sleeping, they're not eating, they don't have the energy to do the things that they used to do. They're struggling at work, they can't focus. They are having just persistent feelings of sadness. Maybe they feel guilty about something and they are clinically depressed. But if you ask them when the last time that they were, when was the last time they were physically active, they can't tell you, right? When was the last time you had a vegetable? right? They can't tell you. And so certainly if you're not taking care of yourself, it's not inevitable that you're going to become depressed, but physical health and mental health play on each other big time, right? If you're not physically well, if you can't move like you want to, right? If you're not able to sleep like you want to, right? If you're not able to get around, get up the stairs, participate in the activities with the people you love and that community that we've talked about throughout this conversation that's so important, it is going to impact your mental health, right? And so for me, fitness has been a huge tool. I'm a doctor. I'm also a mom of two. And fitness is like my time to be by myself. And when I can't be by myself, I bring my kids with me, which is really important because they get to see me be active. They get to develop some of those habits that are so important to really living a healthy life. But one of the things that I know, this is not my opinion, this is science, is that, if you give somebody a fitness program and you let it work for as long as it takes to let an antidepressant work, which is 4 to 6 weeks, and they do it daily, they're just as effective. So when it comes to depression and anxiety, in mild to moderate cases, severe cases, you may also need to take a medication, but exercise is very effective at not only treating, but helping to prevent the recurrence of depression and anxiety. So it's so very important. And I tell my patients all the time, sometimes I'll go in and, I'll have an agitated patient in the morning or they just don't feel like talking to me. And so I'll just ask them to do something for me. I'll be like, okay, hit these 50 body weight squats and a couple push-ups. I'm gonna come back. If you still a little irritated, we're gonna have to talk about something else. And usually I'll come back and they'll be like, yeah, doc, that did help. I do feel a lot better. And so, sometimes when we're irritable or sad, moving around will help a ton. So
I love it. I need you right here by me, Dr. Britt. I need you right now, right here
huge.
by
It's
me.
huge.
So you are a young woman, as you just said, you have two beautiful babies that are looking up to you. What
Mhm,
would you say to them right now as they are developing? If you could go back to your younger self
mhm,
and get on Howard's campus today,
mhm,
what would you say to those young people to one, encourage, give them some hope and
mhm,
to navigate this world that doesn't care in a lot
mhm,
of respects about
mhm,
them, but
mhm,
how they gotta, like you just said, to fill your cup, you
mhm,
found your opportunity through fitness. How would you
mhm.
help them do the
Yeah,
same?
yeah. So I think the biggest thing that I would tell myself and other youth that are in that stage of their life right now is just that you're worthy, right? And how you talk to yourself, but also how you treat yourself. So you're worthy of taking care of yourself. You're worthy of treatment of not just mental illness, but physical illness if you're experiencing it. That superwoman syndrome, that superman syndrome that so many of us have where we ignore things until it's too late. You are so worthy of getting out ahead of that, right? You are so worthy of being at your best self so that whatever you're creating, whatever job you're doing, whatever you're contributing to this world, those gifts continue to give because you have something that God only gave you, right? I know that that might sound a little grandiose, but there is a reason that all of us are here, and it's specific and it's divine. And if we don't nurture those gifts and if we don't take care of them, they die prematurely. And to me, that is the tragedy, right? And so I would just tell, my children, myself back then, and anybody who's in that stage in life, that you deserve it. You deserve to take care of yourself. You deserve to do the things that you love to do with ease. And, you can't do that if you're out of breath or if you can't get out of bed because you're too sad. And so there are resources. And you are worthy of finding them and using them and trying again. Sometimes the first therapist doesn't work. Sometimes the first psychiatrist doesn't work. You're not a match. That doesn't mean that all of mental health treatment is bad, right? It just means that you have to keep trying, and you have to keep trying because you deserve it and because you're worthy.
Thank you, Dr. Britt. You have an open invitation to the Sister Covenant. It is unfortunate that we are losing some of our best and brightest
Mhm.
to this, I call it a hopelessness, an
Yeah.
epidemic proportion. But certainly with young women like you, it gives hope. It gives me hope to see you, to see your passion, and to see that you are not just um, in that profession, you believe in your core that you can do something to help yourself in addition to getting the help that is needed.
Yeah. And I think, you know, one of the things that we haven't necessarily stated or talked about yet, but that I do want to emphasize is that, you know, if you do have to take medication for a mental illness, so you don't always, right? Therapy is very effective. Therapy, in a lot of cases, therapy and exercise are just as effective as medication. But if you do have a more severe type of mental illness and you have to take medication, I just always like to point out that when somebody has cancer, for example, nobody shames the patient, right? In fact, we hope that you come in and that you do the screenings that you need regularly so that we can catch the cancer as physicians early in that stage 1 before it has spread anywhere. And when we think of things like depression or even psychosis, mania, right? If we catch it at stage 1 before it spreads to other areas of life and, you know, really affects our physical, mental, and emotional well-being and trickles into our financial well-being because we're not well enough to go to work, right? Or our physical health, those types of things, right? If we catch it at stage 1, we're doing our jobs, right? And so looking at depression, looking at mental illness, like any other physical illness that may require medication, nobody shames a diabetic for taking their insulin, right? Nobody should shame anybody with depression, with a psychotic disorder, or with mania for taking medication. And nobody should feel ashamed for having to take those medications. And that's so very important. Even when we talk about suicide, right? Suicide is the final stage of depression. So when somebody with cancer gets to stage 4 and they die, it's very sad. But, you know, we understand that. And I think that makes more sense. But if we start to have the conversation around mental illness like that, where suicide is that stage 4 of depression, and if we intervene earlier, I think people can have better outcomes. And I just really want to state that to not be afraid to take medication, not to be afraid to go to therapy, not to be afraid to tell somebody who maybe isn't a mental health provider that you need help so that you can get that help is very important.
It is okay not to be
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. And we got to talk about it more. We got to share more. We, as the super women, have to say, you know, I've gone through it. I've gone through times where I'm just not on point. You know, I'm 10 pounds overweight. I don't like what I look like in that picture, or I didn't handle that scenario well. I said some things I'm sorry about. Let's talk about why that happened.
Yeah.
You know, there's something usually behind that if somebody's acting out differently. So we gotta recognize, acknowledge, and then ask for help, and then help others get the help they need. So we got to have more and more of these conversations. So Dr. Britt, you know, don't try to block my calls because I'm gonna call
Absolutely
you,
not.
because this conversation is one that needs to move forward,
Yeah.
move outward, and more people need to be engaged in the conversation and in the action of helping our whole community be better. Understand that there is help out there.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having the conversation and hosting the conversation. You know, these platforms don't exist unless somebody makes them real. So thank you for using your power too. You are appreciated.
Be blessed. Wow. She is just so insightful. Like I said, just 30 years old, but it is a blessing that she followed her heart after some journeys of her own, some valley moments, but some blessings of having her own son, that she realized that this was her life's calling. So we are so blessed by her. And I hope that that conversation helps some sister out there to help a family member leaning in, as we've talked about before, knowing the signs and what to watch for. So just like her friend said to her, just because you're carrying the load does not mean that it is not heavy. Now, I am excited to bring this next young lady to the Sister Covenant, Jaden Calhoun. Jaden is a junior attending a local high school right here in Jacksonville, Florida. And she happens to be my little cousin, second cousin of my husband, actually. So, cousin by marriage, but nonetheless, family. And this young lady, at a young age, as a freshman in high school, she decided she wanted to write down her thoughts around this very important topic of suicide, as she had experienced the unthinkable of a friend of hers in middle school committing suicide. So she wrote this book, The Little Things. And I had a conversation to talk. I had an opportunity to have a conversation, sit down and talk with her as well a couple of days ago. And I want to share that conversation with you. Jaden, welcome. Welcome to the Sister Covenant. How are you, my dear?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. We got big hair today. We got a lot of hair.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I love it. I love it. My little cousin. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. So we are here because you are an author, recently published. I am so incredibly proud of you. So proud of you. At 16,
Yes,
you
ma'am.
are a published author. Let us see that book. It's a beautiful cover. I love it. The Little Things, The Little Things. And there's your name, Jaden Calhoun.
Yes, ma'am.
So, Jaden, you know that May is mental awareness month, and the month of May. And your book, The Little Things, talks about mental illness, specifically suicide, right?
Yes.
So help us with that. You started writing this some year and a half ago, I think. You were like a freshman in high school. So why? Why did you feel the need to write your thoughts down around a subject so sensitive like suicide?
Because I read a lot. And books like the one that I wrote always end with a happy ending. And I know from personal experience that not all the time it ends with a happy ending. So I wanted to show that suicide, it's not always going to be helped. Sometimes it can't be helped.
So you are a rising junior here in Jacksonville, Florida, and you had an incident that happened as a middle schooler where a friend actually committed suicide. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, ma'am. So my friend, he didn't really tell anybody that he was going through anything. He always seemed really happy. So I really didn't know that anything was wrong at the time. But then he didn't show up to school for like a few weeks, and he's like one of those students that never misses. So then one day, me and my group of friends, we got called into the office, and when they told us, it was just like we all just like froze. Like we didn't know how to react to it. But yeah, so that was something, and it's always stuck with me.
So, Jaden, you said something really key. He always seemed happy.
Yes.
So, thinking back, did you ever see any signs? And do you have other friends that you've seen some signs in depression? Do you all talk about that, especially since your friend's situation and incident?
A little bit, not as often as we probably should talk about it, but every once in a while, like usually at like night, like 12 a.m. onward, we'll just have like deep conversations and stuff like that will come up. So yeah.
So I'm not going to tell your parents that you're up at 12 a.m. That'll be just your and our audience's secret. Okay?
Yes.
So tell us about The Little Things. did his death and passing have anything to do with you deciding to write this book?
A little bit, yes, ma'am. Uh, his attitude, I guess, kind of influenced it a lot. Yeah.
How are you hoping that the little things, how are you hoping that it will positively impact your friends, your friend group?
I hope it I hope it allows them to know that, well, we will always be there for each other, no matter what we're going through, but also to be open about it. Um, because again, we're not gonna know for sure if they're actually okay or not unless they tell us. So I'm just kind of hoping that it shows that we will always be there, no matter what.
Do you mind sharing an excerpt from the book?
Sure. Thanks. Okay. So this one, it says, Jameson leaned forward, the wind trying its hardest to push him back with no luck, and he began to fall. But like every other time, Mystery Boy showed up at the wrong moment and stopped his attempt at a tone of happiness, or maybe even a tone of sadness. Jameson let out a quiet sign of protest before he was wrapped in the coldness of a wet human body. He was being hugged. It was a hug from the back, and the taller male made sure to cover Jameson enough to stop the water droplets from reaching his head. Mystery Boy was happy, so entirely happy that he cried with tears of relief as he hugged the shorter boy, relief that he hadn't killed himself and that he hadn't moved spots. Once the hug was over, Jameson was pulled slightly away from the cliff, and then he was standing alone, Mystery Boy only a few feet away from him. Where'd you go? He asked Jameson, his voice being raised just enough that he knew Jameson couldn't have missed it. Jameson was confused by that question. Where was he? Did that mean Mystery Boy hadn't been coming here every night waiting for Jameson? Mystery Boy waited? He didn't want Jameson to actually kill himself.
Wow. Wow. But in your book, Jameson does.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Where would you go, Jaden? Or where do you feel there's safety in you talking when you are stressed or depressed?
I usually go to my friends, specifically my friend Lachey. Me and her talk a lot about how we're feeling, depression-wise. So she's my little escape, and I'm her little escape. It definitely helps a lot.
So, Jaden, I just again applaud you for at such a young age to recognize the need. And I will even go forward to say just you writing this book is a way for you to, from a healthy perspective, talk about this very sensitive subject and recognize that it is really a real thing, as they say. And hopefully, through this book, it will help others your age and even my age understand the seriousness of getting help and the seriousness of being that confidant, if you will, like you and your friend. But there are other resources out there as well. And we're going to talk about them a little bit later on the Sister Covenant. So thank you so much, my dear. You are beautiful. And I am so excited for what the future holds for you as a writer. I know you want to be either a communications major or a veterinarian. So you can do it all. You can do both. Do everything. Do
Yes.
everything. Everything. Thank you, my dear cousin.
Thank you for having me.
Love you.
Mwah.
Just beautiful. Beautiful. I encourage everybody to purchase this book, and we have that information for you right on the screen. Purchase this book, this very powerful book by Jaden Calhoun. I know it will bless you as it has me, and share it with someone you know in your life that can be blessed by it as well. Now, my sisters, as always, we want to share with you a powerful, powerful PSA by some young women that want to tell you why they got vaccinated and boosted. And after that conversation, then you too, again, encourage someone you love that you know hasn't taken that step to do the same. So, as always, my sisters, be bold, be brave, brilliant, and beautiful. You all are beautiful. And I wish you a most blessed and safe summer. We are excited about what is coming with the Sistah Covenant and what is coming in all of our lives as we go forth and live life abundantly. We'll be checking in with you over the summer, but until we meet again, the first Sunday in September, be blessed. I'm Pat Gillum-Sams, the founder and CEO of the Sistah Covenant. Powerful women lead, they don't follow. They use their voice as their truth to empower other women as well as protect and lift their family, friends, and elevate entire communities. These bold, brilliant, brave, and beautiful women are wives, mothers, sisters, and friends, my friends, for 20, 30, 40 plus years, newfound friends. I'm so proud to be a part of this powerful Sistah circle of women using our collective voice to make a difference.
My name is Dr. Courtney Owens. I chose to get vaccinated because as an emergency medicine physician, I've had the unfortunate responsibility of holding the hand of a young, healthy, 30-year-old man as he took his last breath and died of COVID-19. I then had to tell his own mother over the phone that she would never get to hold his hand again. This death and thousands of others could have easily been prevented with vaccinations. Vaccinations are the one thing that have been proven, along with masking and social distancing, to be safe and to be effective at preventing COVID-19. Take responsibility for yourself, for your family, and for your community. Get vaccinated. Strong women get vaccinated. Together, we can.
Hello, I am Whitney Lewis. I am a senior at the Florida State University. And the reason why I got vaccinated is because this pandemic has heavily impacted my family and I. On June 2020, I unfortunately lost my grandmother and my great uncle. And once we heard about the vaccines coming out, my family and I knew we were ready to get the vaccine. So I was able to get it and no issues occurred. And so did my parents get vaccinated. And we're just very grateful that we were able to receive this, unlike others who weren't able to see this day. So I highly encourage you all to get vaccinated. It keeps you safe and your family safe.
I decided to get vaccinated because I was very eager and excited to get back to normal life. I'm a college student, and I think most people can agree that college is a very important part of your development. And so I was really excited to get back to normal life. And then I also recognize that you cannot win a pandemic or beat a pandemic with a selfish mindset. And I understand that we are all in this together. And ultimately, I believe that powerful women get vaccinated, and we are in this together.
I decided to get vaccinated because I deeply adore and most importantly respect the health of my peers, my colleagues, and people in my community. Powerful women get vaccinated. Together, we win.
Hi everyone, my name is Lindsay Winbush. I am 24 years old, and as a young person living currently in a multi-generational household with parents who are in their 60s and a grandfather who is in his early 90s, I felt like it was necessary to get vaccinated just because of the protection that it offered both me and the people that I care about, that I live with. I know that as people, as citizens in this world, we are all living with this pandemic, and it's important to realize that we are a part of the solution. It's bigger than us, and it's important that we can play our part to get vaccinated and help achieve a solution in a world where COVID-19 has dissipated. So we know that powerful women get vaccinated. Together we win.
I got vaccinated because I saw firsthand how COVID-19 makes the body feel when I tested positive for the virus back in January. I've also had family and friends test positive, some of which have been hospitalized and had to fight for their lives. I want to be safe, I want those around me to be safe, and I want you to be safe as well. Remember, powerful women get vaccinated. Together we win.
My name is Dr. Anita Pettaway Tyler, and I am the medical contributor for the awesome Sistah Covenant. I am here to tell you that I would like to encourage you to remain vigilant. We all must. COVID-19 is running rampant in our communities, and so we must do something. The something is prevention. The way to prevent COVID-19 is, number one, to get a vaccination. Millions of people have been vaccinated to date, and the vaccine is safe and effective. The other thing that we can do is to make sure that we're masking. We should wear our mask indoors and also outdoors in crowds where the vaccination status is unknown. And lastly, we can make sure that we continue to practice social distancing. We must do this to prevent COVID-19. We can do this, and together we win. Thank you.
We urge, we besiege, we implore you, we beg you today, right now, in this moment, to remain vigilant. These are uncertain times, and we ask you to encourage everyone you care about and love, and even those you don't, to wear their mask, wash their hands, practice good hygiene, remain socially distant, and get the vaccination. Powerful women get vaccinated. And together we win.